Right, time for me to do some predictions videos, and because there are 3 in very swift succession, 2 of which don't have a lot of people on that I really want to talk about, I'm going to do all 3 as one. We have a fight night coming up, that's on the Thursday. We also have a TUF finale coming up. I don't know what day that is because different sources tell me different things, but it's somewhere between that Thursday and the Saturday where we have UFC 194. So I'm going to do this all as one, starting with Thursday's event, which is the fight night. It's headed by a women's bout, number 3 seeds this is, versus number 7. Don't know, don't really care. We do have Jim Miller and Michael Chezier on the card next. Do you know, I like both of these, but I do think that Jim Miller will probably win this one. It's interesting because they are both ground specialists, so we will see how that one plays out, particularly as it's right up there at the top of the card, and they tend to put, you know, if they're going to have 2 ground people, they tend to put them closer to the bottom. Sage Northcutt versus Cody Pfister. Now, this is interesting because Sage Northcutt has become the new sort of prospect for a face for the institution. This will of course be pending on what happens to Conor McGregor this month, but I shall get to that later. So Sage Northcutt has just sort of been announced to the world as the, you know, the new, the next best thing, so to speak. Perfect record of 6, and he's going up against somebody who's 12-4. He's this high up on the card because of that. It's the fame rather than anything else. Do you know, he's mainly known for being on his feet. And of course the other guy, you know, statistically speaking, he's higher on his feet than on the ground, but I don't think they would risk giving him somebody that they weren't reasonably sure he would do well against. So I'm going to go for Sage Northcutt on that. Thiago Santos and Elias Theodoro. A perfect record of 11, in fact, for Elias, whereas 11-3 for Thiago Santos. But I think, do you know, I think I'm going to go with Thiago Santos on this. And it's interesting because this is 2 strikers, and this would usually be or the second bout on the card, whereas the Miller-Chezier fight would be the 4th, just because with styles they do tend to think that there's still this very traditional view that, you know, 2 heavy hitters are going to be a better seller than 2 people on the ground. There we are. I don't think that's always true, but I do think that the institution has had difficulties with groundsmen who will do what's called lay and pray. They basically stall for time. It's not quite as exciting as perhaps dancing around. Even if you don't get a knockout, there's still movement going on, you know, for the full 3 rounds. So I think that's sort of the institution, and I applaud them for, on this case, somehow swapping those 2 round. If we look at the preliminaries, Tim Means and John Howard, I'd probably go for Tim Means on that. Again, that's 2 strikers there, mainly. Omari Akhmedov and Sergio Moraes, 15-2 versus 9-3. Do you know, I don't know either of them enough to say. For some reason, Sergio sticks out in my mind, but I don't know why. Antonio Carlos Jr. and Kevin Casey, 6-1 versus 10-3. That one, Carlos Jr. will be on the ground for. That's groundsman versus striker, but I don't know enough about them really. Aljamain Sterling and Johnny Eduardo, both of these are seeded number 5 and 10 respectively. Perfect record for Aljamain, who I believe is an up-and-comer. Johnny Eduardo, 27 and 9. This will be an interesting one, because this will also do very well in showing if the seedings are correct, because in theory Aljamain should win this one. You know, he's ranked 5, the other guy's ranked 10. So there's quite a huge disparity there. But records, you know, the other guys had a hell of a lot of experience, 27 and 9, and Aljamain has this perfect record that, you know, could be tainted. Having said all of that, I still think that Aljamain Sterling will probably win. This is going to be groundsman versus striker, probably, although Johnny Eduardo's pretty mixed statistically. But I think that's probably what the organisers had in mind. Santiago Poncibibio and Andreas Stahl. We've got 21 and 3 versus 9 and 1. Don't know. Don't really care about that one. Danny Roberts and Nathan Coy. For some reason I feel like I've heard of Nathan Coy before, and I don't know why. Danny Roberts, according to this, is English, but they don't have any statistics for either of those two, or pictures. Zubara Turkagov from Russia, and Felipe Nova, who is at the bottom of the card. There we are. 17 and 3 versus 12 and 5. I imagine Felipe Nova will do well there. And we've got a women's bout to finish the card. Kaylin Curran and Emily Kagan. No idea. No idea either if that is a Curran as in the Currans, which are a family within mixed martial arts, although I only know of 2 males in the same family. But who knows? If it is, then she's likely to be quite good. A record 3 and 1 versus 3 and 2, so who knows? I don't know that to be certain. So there we are. Shall we move on? I think we should. It's taken longer than I thought it would. There we are. We've got, the next one is the Ultimate Fighter finale card, and they don't have the 2 people fighting that I thought they would. They don't have Faber on the card at all. Not sure why. Maybe he's been injured. I do know that it's pointless having him fighting Conor McGregor, who he was against, because obviously Conor McGregor is fighting in the next card, and I'll get to that. This is Frankie Edgar versus Chad Mendes, which was thrown up out of the issue with Chad Mendes not quite managing to beat Conor McGregor. It's interesting because these are 2 fantastic people. They are 2 fantastic people, either of which would make a brilliant champion at that weight division. Frankie Edgar has held titles. Chad Mendes hasn't. But of course, if he were to beat Frankie Edgar here, he would be next on the list, presuming of course that when Conor McGregor falls, they don't want to do a rematch for that first. Either way, Chad Mendes is in a good position, because the likelihood is if he loses this one, he will get to fight a rematch with Conor McGregor when he loses. If he wins, he then goes on to challenge a second time. Frankie Edgar, I suppose, is in the same boat, because if he wins, he's likely to then go on and fight Jose Aldo. If he loses, he is likely to, well, fight Conor McGregor, I suppose. It's these 4 men, 3 of which are outstanding, 1 of which just shouldn't be there. Who knows? I don't know. 18 and 4 for Frankie Edgar, 17 and 3. It totally depends on the night. Frankie Edgar is probably the safer bet, because he's held the title, a title before, and he's not so likely to react on the spur of the moment and make a costly mistake, like Chad Mendes did with Conor McGregor. So there we are. Edson Barboza and Tony Ferguson next on the card. Again, these are two people that I think are great. Edson Barboza number 6, Tony Ferguson number 7. 16-3, 20-3 are their records. These are two heavy hitters, but who knows? Tony Ferguson has the advantage on the ground, and I think I would like to see them swap places in the seeds there. So I'm hoping Tony Ferguson wins that one. Joe Lauzon and Evan Dunham, an interesting fight this one. 24-11. Joe Lauzon has been around the for a long time, and Evan Dunham sort of has been one of those people who got quite a long way and then sort of stalled. So it's going to be very interesting to see who wins here as well. I don't know. I don't know with this one. If Evan Dunham is on form, it could be very competitive. If he isn't, then Joe should sort of make an easy deal of it. So that will depend, I think, on Evan Dunham more than anything else. Ryan LaFleur and Mike Pierce, 11-1 versus 17-6. Again, they're both heavy hitters, and Ryan LaFleur has the advantage on the ground, statistically speaking. I think I would go for him. Tatsuya Kawajiri and Jason Knight. I don't know. Probably Kawajiri on that one. Gabriel Gonzaga and Constantine Ero something or other. 16-10 versus 9-2. Not going to say a squash match, but and go for Gabriel Gonzaga there. Joby Sanchez and Gina, a man, I hasten to add, Hera, no idea. Those could well be toughers, but I don't know, to be totally honest. So there we are. Let's move on to the more exciting thing, and that, of course, is UFC 194, is it? Yes, 194. And, of course, this is the interesting bout that we have all been waiting for, because Conor McGregor, Mr. McShouty, blah 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 blah, he's like Chael Sonnen II, he really is. He, I won't say got lucky, but he capitalised on a mistake that Chad Mendes made when they were fighting for the interim championship at that division, because Jose Aldo was out with an injury that would take a while for him to recover from. Now, this is interesting because I do feel that the referees, you know, the fans wanted to see this fight. They wanted to see Conor McGregor versus Jose Aldo. They didn't particularly want to see Conor McGregor versus Chad Mendes, and unfortunately a lot of us thought we'd never get to see this fight because Chad Mendes was one of those people who we thought would probably be able to beat Conor McGregor. Thankfully, he didn't, and that has meant that, you know, now that Jose Aldo is better again, they're in a position to fight right at the end of the year. Sort of talk about saving the best till last, really. So it's interesting because there are two very, very different things that people are saying. Conor McGregor has grown up this last year to be quite a character within the UFC. It must also be noted that he is from Ireland, and therefore is quite central to being a niche market, if you like. The UFC do like to have very dependable stars that are from niche markets, and, you know, our area of the world now, particularly as they are expanding too quickly, I think, through the rest of the world, is sort of as niche as anything else. And being that, you know, they played before on Michael Bisping, sort of being a British hooligan, if you like, they've taken a very similar approach with Conor McGregor, because he does like to talk a lot of smack, which is brilliant. It helps them create money, and that's what this is all about. Now, Jose Aldo has been extremely reliable as a champion, and extremely reliable throughout his entire career. 25-1 is his record. He has only lost to one person in his entire career. 18-2 for Conor McGregor, but he hasn't held the title for God knows how long, and beaten every single person that comes across him. There is something to be said about that. I find it unlikely that this setback with injury will mean that he is terribly suddenly really bad. There is a danger, there is always a danger when a fighter has been out for a long time of ring rust, but with somebody of that calibre, I just don't see it. I think that Jose Aldo will probably win here, but it could well be one of those disappointing things as well, where it's over within the first, 10 seconds of the match, and therefore they all want to have an instant rematch or whatever. Anyway, people are also forgetting that on the same card, Chris Weidman is fighting Luke Rockhold, and that's a title fight as well. 13, a perfect record of 13 for Chris. This is the guy who was so overlooked and not given the props that he deserved when he got the title against Anderson Silva. Luke Rockhold, very strong contender, 14-2. Hope it's a good match, but I do hope that Chris manages to keep the title there. Ronaldo Souza is fighting Yoel Romero, and those are also in the same weight division, and this is number 2 and number 3 seed. So this is a sort of the next contender will be born out of this. Now, Ronaldo Souza has had a fantastic time over the last year, maybe 2, something like that. He's done really well, and he is brilliant. And I do hope that he wins this one and gets to then fight for the title. That will be interesting to see. Damian Maia and Gunnar Nelson. Damian Maia has been around a long time. He's seeded number 6, very good on the ground, although people do criticise him. Statistically speaking, according to this, he's not as good on the ground as Gunnar Nelson. Who knows? 14-1. We shall see with that. Again, that is going to be an excellent match. This is a really good card. It has to be said. I think this is one of the best cards that they've had, for much of the year, to be honest. Uriah Faber is obviously okay because he is fighting on this card, and perhaps he deserves that as well. Uriah Faber is the sort of person who just cannot get a gold medal in the UFC, but did extremely well in WEC. He's fighting Frankie Sainz or something, who I've never heard of. 11-2 is his record versus 38-8. He's also ranked 13 as opposed to 4th. I hope Uriah Faber does well here, because I do think he deserves it. There is a women's bout on the card. Techia Torres, seeded number 5, against Jocelyn somebody or other, who doesn't even have a picture. Wally Alves and Colby Covington, don't know. Perfect 10 versus Perfect 8. We don't know that one, to be honest. Might have to guess. Colby Covington, there we are. Leonardo Santos and Kevin Lee. 14-4 versus 11-1. I hope Kevin Lee wins that one, but who knows? Who knows? And right at the bottom of the card, we've got, is that Joe? Yes. Joe Proctor and Magomed Mustafayev or something like that. I hope Joe Proctor wins that. I think he probably will. That again is quite a stark groundsman versus striker match. you know, the touchpad on this is reversed on Windows 10, which is just annoying. John McDessie is fighting Yancy Medeiros. Hopefully John McDessie wins that one, but I don't know. And the final one is Court McGee and Marcio Alexandra. Court McGee hopefully will win that one as well. So those may not have been around so much recently, may even not be as good as they were, but they are well known, most of those names, at least, you know, one in every card. One in every bout. So there we are, that's my massive 20-minute long predictions video for you there.